Thousands of years ago, a group of people gathered atop a mountain, lighting fires and inhaling smoke. And that smoke was cannabis. When did humans start smoking weed? How did a single plant reshape history, culture, and even religious rituals? Long before you ever knew it, cannabis had already become a part of human life. In this video, you'll discover the ancient story behind cannabis smoke. Facts you've probably never heard before. Stay with us till the end. You won't want to miss this.
You lie back, the room dim and still, as the quiet hum of night fills your ears. Your breathing slows, the world outside fades away, and your mind begins to wander, drifting back through time to a question that seems both simple and endless. When did people start smoking weed? When did that curious plant first meet human fire and breath? You let the thought roll softly in your mind, like smoke curling through air. To find the answer, you'll have to travel backward, past your own lifetime, past the cities and the roads and the lights, to a world still raw and half forgotten. Somewhere long ago, before there were nations or borders or written words, there were people who looked at the earth and saw a strange green plant growing wild. Its leaves spread like open hands. Its scent was sharp and sweet, almost familiar, even though they had no word for it yet. You imagine them, early humans wandering the steppes of Central Asia, their campfires flickering beneath an endless night sky. They gathered what they could find, roots, herbs, seeds. Some they ate, some they burned for warmth, and some, like cannabis, they discovered had a secret of its own. No one knows exactly who was first. Maybe it was in the mountains of what is now Western China. Maybe along the ancient Silk Road before it even had a name. But somewhere, someone tossed those dried green leaves into the fire, and a new kind of smoke rose. A smoke that didn't just fill the air, but seemed to fill the mind. You can almost smell it, thick, earthy, strange. The fire crackles softly as people lean closer, eyes half-lidded, laughter slower, movements lazy and calm. They don't call it weed or marijuana or hemp. To them, it's just another mystery of the natural world, something that makes the night a little warmer, the stars a little brighter. And so it begins, the long, drifting story of cannabis and humankind. Thousands of years pass. The plant spreads, carried in clay pots, in woven baskets, in the stories and habits of travelers. It moves from valley to valley, from tribe to tribe, from generation to generation. And every time it moves, it changes shape, its meaning, its purpose, its place in the world. You drift along that current of time, watching it flow. In ancient China, around 2700 BCE, the old legends speak of an emperor called Shen Nung, the father of Chinese medicine. They say he was wise, curious, and endlessly patient. He tested plants on himself, one by one, learning what healed and what harmed. Among them, he found cannabis. He called it Ma. It was said to ease pain, to calm the spirit, to help with sleep and sorrow. You can picture his scrolls, ink fading on thin bamboo strips, his words like whispers across time. Ma, he writes, warms the 5 organs, frees the spirit, and opens the channels of the heart. But even then, it wasn't just medicine. In ancient rituals, hemp fibers were spun into ropes and cloth. The seeds were eaten, the smoke rose in temples where priests spoke to unseen gods. The plant had already learned to live alongside people, to feed them, to clothe them, to soothe them. Now you float further west. The landscape shifts. The dry plains of Central Asia roll into view. There, around 500 BCE, the Scythians ride their horses through the wind, fierce and proud. Herodotus, the Greek historian, would one day write of them with fascination. He said that when the Scythians wished to cleanse themselves, they made a small tent, threw hemp seeds on red-hot stones, and breathed in the rising vapor. They shouted in joy as if transported by pleasure. You can almost hear it now, the sound of laughter echoing across the grasslands, the scent of burning hemp drifting in the air. And you realize something. The history of weed isn't just about smoking. It's about connection, ritual, escape, healing. It's about how people, across time, found ways to soften the edges of reality. The Scythians pass away, their golden jewelry buried with them. But the plant stays. It finds new homes in Persia, in India, in Africa. Each culture gives it new names, new meanings. In India, you find it thriving under the sun. There, it becomes sacred, part of the rituals dedicated to Shiva, the god who dances between creation and destruction. People crush its leaves, mix them with milk, and call it bhang. They drink it on festivals, letting the calm wash over them. You can see them sitting by the Ganges, the river glowing gold at sunset, chanting softly, their voices rising and falling with the rhythm of the water. Bhang is the joy giver, the liberator, they say. To them, it's not sin or vice, it's divine, a bridge between the body and the spirit. You move further still, following the plant's quiet migration. Across deserts and seas, it travels with traders, explorers, and dreamers. Along the old trade routes, its seeds scatter in the sand, its fibers woven into sails and ropes. In the Middle East, around the 9th century, you find it again, this time under a different name, hashish, crumbled resin, soft and sticky, pressed by hand. The air smells of spice and smoke. Here, in the Islamic Golden Age, while scholars study the stars and write of medicine and philosophy, others whisper about a strange new herb that brings dreams. Some call it dangerous, others divine, but it spreads all the same, through poetry, through stories, through song. You imagine an old poet sitting in a candle-lit room, a small clay pipe beside him. His eyes are half closed as he writes about gardens of paradise and drifting clouds. The smoke curls upward, soft and slow, carrying his thoughts with it. By now, you've traveled thousands of years, and you begin to see a pattern. Wherever people go, the plant follows. Whenever life feels heavy, people turn to it for relief. It's always the same. Different names, different rituals, but the same gentle desire to feel lighter, to forget for a while. You drift next to Africa. There, in the warm air of the Rift Valley, the plant grows wild and strong. People use it for medicine, for ceremony, for community. They share it in circles, telling stories that last long into the night. It becomes part of their rhythm of life, a way to connect with ancestors, to ease pain, to bring laughter. By the time you reach the Middle Ages, cannabis has spread across Europe, though not always for smoking. It's grown for its fibers, hemp ropes for ships, cloth from monks, parchment for scribes. Kings and queens, farmers and sailors all depend on the humble plant, though few know of its hidden side. Still, in quiet corners, the old traditions survive. A healer in a small village burns its leaves to ease a cough. A traveler keeps a pouch of seeds for good luck. The plant never truly disappears. It just waits, quietly, for its time to return. You can feel time speeding up now, centuries blurring into one another. Empires rise and fall. Ships cross oceans. The plant sails westward, carried by explorers to the New World. In the Americas, it finds fresh soil and new purposes. Colonists grow hemp for rope and sails, but African slaves bring with them a different understanding of the plant as medicine, as peace, as memory. You can almost see it, fields of tall, swaying stalks under a burning sun, people singing softly as they work, the plant moving again, through cultures, through pain, through time. By the 1800s, scientists in Europe begin studying it seriously. They isolate compounds, test effects, write long papers filled with Latin and caution. Doctors prescribed tinctures of cannabis for pain, for insomnia, for hysteria. The old wisdom of Shen Nung and the Indian healers returns in glass bottles labeled cannabis extract. But every era has its fears, and as the world modernizes, suspicion grows. Smoking becomes symbol, rebellion, threat. Empires worry about control, governments about order. The plant, once sacred, becomes forbidden. You breathe softly. The story isn't over yet. It never really is. You feel yourself drifting at the edge of centuries, where curiosity and fear meet. The air thickens. The world begins to change again. Somewhere, far away, a match strikes in a dimly lit room. A small cloud rises, gray, sweet, ancient. And as you watch it drift upward, curling lazily toward the ceiling,
You don't notice when the centuries shift again. It happens softly, like the slow turn of a wheel. The campfires and tents fade, replaced by dim gas lamps, narrow streets, and the hum of modern life. The world has changed, but the plant remains. You walk through the late 1800s, the air filled with invention and curiosity. Steam engines, telegrams, factories, all rushing toward a future no one can quite see. In quiet apothecaries, bottles of cannabis tincture sit on wooden shelves labeled for pain, for sleep, for melancholy. Doctors recommend it. Patients trust it. The smoke of the old rituals has turned into medicine in a bottle. But as progress speeds up, so does fear. Around the early 1900s, the world begins to draw lines between what is useful and what is dangerous. New laws appear, written by men who fear what they don't understand. In the United States, the story takes a new shape. Immigrants from Mexico bring with them the tradition of smoking marijuana, the same plant, a new name. They roll it in paper, share it in music-filled gatherings, and let the world slow down for a while. But those in power look at it with suspicion. Newspapers spread panic. Words like evil weed and madness fill the headlines. You walk past them, old black and white posters, wide eyes, wild claims. Reefer madness, they say. It corrupts the youth. You can almost hear the anxious voices of that era, afraid of change, afraid of freedom, afraid of the unknown. And so the plant becomes outlawed. What was once sacred, medicinal, and ordinary now turns into a symbol of rebellion. But quietly it keeps living in the corners of society, smoked in jazz clubs, whispered about in alleyways, passed between friends in secret. The 1920s and 1930s pulse with rhythm and smoke. The music of that time, soft and slow, carries the same dreamy calm as the fires of ancient Scythia. Saxophones sigh, drums hum low, and you can almost feel the same gentle haze settling over the crowd. Decades drift by. The Second World War comes and goes. Nations rise, fall, and rebuild. In the 1960s, a new generation begins to search again for peace, for love, for something that feels real. And there it is, waiting for them, the old green plant, reborn in fields and festivals. You see them now, young people with flowers in their hair, sitting on grass, passing a joint in the sunlight. They talk about freedom, consciousness, dreams. They play guitars, paint, write poetry. To them, it isn't just a plant. It's a quiet protest, a way to say no to war, to conformity, to the hard edges of the modern world. And again the smoke rises, curling gently into the warm air, carrying that same timeless rhythm. You walk through it all, feeling the years flow past like a river. Governments fight back, laws tighten, jails fill, but the story keeps going, quietly, stubbornly. The plant refuses to disappear. In the 1970s and 80s, researchers begin to look closer again, not with fear, but with curiosity. They find new words for old mysteries: THC, cannabinoids, receptors. The science that once ignored the plant now turns toward it, trying to understand why it calms pain, eases sleep, softens anxiety. You watch scientists in white coats move carefully through their labs, eyes tired but patient. They test, measure, write, and slowly the truth begins to reappear, a truth people once knew thousands of years ago beside campfires and temples, that cannabis heals. You move through time again, the years quicken, the world grows louder, faster. Cities glow with screens, noise, endless motion. But beneath it all, a quiet change begins. People start talking openly now about what was once forbidden. Patients speak of pain relieved. Veterans speak of nightmares eased. The old fear begins to fade. In one country after another, laws soften. Debates rise and fall, politicians argue, and the people just keep growing, smoking, healing. The plant reclaims its space, no longer a threat, but a companion again. You drift into the 2000s. The internet hums like a vast electric ocean. Information spreads faster than fear. People learn, share, remember. They find the old words again: ma, bhang, hashish, hemp. Different names, one story. In some places, it becomes legal once more, not just as medicine, but as choice. People light it with calm hands, in homes, in parks, under stars, not to rebel, not to escape, but simply to breathe, to slow down, to remember the rhythm that has followed humanity for millennia. You picture it now, the same plant, the same smoke, drifting upward through every age, from ancient tents to modern apartments, from sacred ritual to quiet self-care. Always the same small moment of stillness, the same soft exhale. You start to see how the story has never really been about cannabis alone. It's about people, about what it means to seek calm in a restless world, about how across every border and every century humans have looked for ways to soften reality, to connect with something beyond themselves. You keep walking, though there's nowhere to go, only time itself, stretching in both directions. You pass through the modern age, cannabis farms lit with golden lamps, glass jars lined neatly on dispensary shelves, scientists studying oils and strains, people arguing about law and freedom. It feels strange, doesn't it, that the same plant once burned in Scythian tents now glows under LED lights in sterile rooms, that the same smoke once rose beside the Ganges now curls above city rooftops. You realize it has always been part of the human story, not a footnote, but a thread woven through everything. You drift closer to the present. The world hums softly. Outside, someone lights a joint on a quiet balcony. The smoke rises gray and silver in the streetlight, curling upward into the cool night air. Somewhere else, a scientist studies the brain, mapping how it glows when THC touches its edges. In another place, a patient closes her eyes, pain fading for the first time in days. Different people, the same moment, the same quiet exhale. You sit down for a while, watching it all unfold, the long arc of history stretching from the mountains of ancient China to the glowing cities of now. You can almost trace it with your hand, the same pattern looping endlessly. Curiosity, discovery, fear, acceptance, always repeating. And you think of how strange it is that something so small, so simple, could carry so much meaning for so long. Maybe that's why it endures, not because of its effects alone, but because it mirrors something deep inside people, the need to slow down, to dream, to feel connected to the moment. You breathe in softly. The air feels thick like the memory of 1,000 campfires. You can almost see them again, the Scythians laughing in their tents, the monks tending hemp fields, the sailors coiling ropes of hemp aboard wooden ships, the poets writing in smoky rooms, the dreamers of the 60s lying under endless summer skies. They're all still here somehow, in the smoke, in the stories, in the gentle way time folds back on itself. You walk through it one last time, past the fields, the temples, the laboratories, the city rooftops, past the arguments and the headlines and the endless change. And at every point in history, you see the same small gesture, a spark, a breath, a calm exhale. You can almost hear it, a soft sigh repeated across millennia, the sound of people trying to understand themselves, to quiet their thoughts, to feel a little closer to something eternal. The story doesn't end. It simply drifts, like smoke, like time, like a thought fading into sleep. You lie back again, the world quiet around you. The same plant that once grew wild